Did you have a secret place where you kept Playboys or other magazines of such sort?
Growing up, you mean?
Yeah.
As a kid?
Yeah. Before you were legally allowed to own such things.
I didn't. So I had a box of personal effects, but they were all pretty innocent. I had like Chinese finger trap and like a compass with binoculars and just tchotchkes, just stuff that I was like, I don't want that to get lost. I kind of put it all in the box. The only contraband I had was matches. And I think at my 10th birthday, I had a sleepover, and my buddies, I was like, hey, take a look at my box of tricks. So we were lighting matches in the basement. My dad came down. He was like, what the hell are you doing? And I had no good excuse.
I feel like I had a whole operation for any Playboys I owned underage. And I can talk about this now because we're probably past the statute of limitation.
Absolutely. 7 years probably on that.
Yeah. I had a friend who basically just stole Playboys from his uncle anytime he went over there. I don't know how he didn't get caught. And then every once in a while, he would give me one, and I would have to find a place to keep it. I think it was usually like in a closet.
So your friend's uncle was the Playboy Baron, and then he got them, and then then you got some of his.
That was the
so trickle down is real.
Correct. Yeah. I think like I got my first Playboy from him as like a birthday present or something.
Nice. What are friends for?
When did you buy your first Playboy?
I don't think I've ever bought a Playboy magazine.
Oh, wow.
In my life. I've bought some real cheap smut, don't get me wrong, but I don't think I ever bought a Playboy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 2 days after my 18th birthday. I went into a gas station. It was like one of the most humiliating experiences of my life.
And you've had many.
Oh, yeah, I've had plenty. This one, yeah, I walked in there. I grabbed 2 magazines. There's a frickin' line at this gas station, so it's small. And the guy behind me taps me on the shoulder and says, hey, man, that's bad for you. So I'm like, okay, sorry. So I walk up to the counter. I show the cashier my ID, and she looks at the ID. Then she looks at me, looks at the ID, and she says, you just made it.
Hey, we're back. Another episode of The Long Road Home Alone. I am Joey Z, here with Jimmy. Jimmy, thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for having me here, too.
You're welcome. How you doing? You good?
I'm all right. What are we talking about today?
Well, I have a correction. Is it a correction? It's a personal correction. Maybe not factual, but just to clear the air.
Oh, no.
I can't believe that I said Joe Pesci isn't funny. Because My Cousin Vinny is one of my favorite comedies.
You know, I was thinking that.
It occurred to me.
It was like My Cousin Vinny is one of the best comedies I think I've ever seen.
It's great. I love it. I've seen it a million times. I can't always call up this stuff instantly because we record these just in the dead of night, and I'm tired.
I mean, I forgave you in the episode, but I'll forgive you again here.
Yeah, I just let the record show.
I
didn't give Joe Pesci enough credit. I didn't give myself enough credit.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm making up.
All right.
Yeah. What are we talking about today?
No clothes on anybody.
Sickening.
Mm-hmm.
Buzz's stuff.
Yeah. So I feel like this is another moment in Home Alone where Kevin is pushing the boundaries of what he's normally allowed to do, breaks into his brother's room, and let's remember, Buzz wouldn't let him sleep in his room
if you were growing on his ass. Right.
So this is definitely a place,
a big transgression.
Not supposed to be here. And he's going through all of his private stuff.
Right.
Now, I feel like, okay, Buzz is what, 14, 15?
14, 15, I think maybe 15, yeah.
Well, you know, a lot older than Kevin. So this is like a treasure trove.
I always thought it was, when I was a kid, I thought, wow, Buzz has a Playboy. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And he's just got it. And it's laying right on top.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned this. We mentioned this before. Not a good place to keep your Playboy.
Not a great place. Not even hiding it. And then I think as I got older, I was like, well, what issue of Playboy is that? Mm-hmm. And it's a brand new issue. I mean, Buzz just got this thing. It's like off the news.
July 1989. So this would have been like a couple months before the movie took place. Right. A few months before the movie took place.
A brand new Playboy. It's not like one that was, you know, that was hidden away. It's not from like the early 80s or something.
No.
Fun fact about that Playboy, though, is, and this this is really, I feel this is really weird.
You're going to talk about Under Siege, aren't you?
I am. Yes. Okay, so for those who don't realize it, this random July 1989 issue of Playboy is the same issue of Playboy that appears, 3 years later?
I think Under Siege is 92.
92?
Yeah.
So 2 years later?
Yeah.
In Under Siege, the Steven Seagal film.
Yeah.
And when I first saw Under Siege, it was well after Home Alone.
Yeah.
And I did a double take.
Yeah. I think the cover appears in, like, well, the cover's definitely in Home Alone, but it shows up multiple times in Under Siege,
totally.
too.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's the same Playboy from Home Alone.
Well, and then that actress who posed in that, I think she's in the centerfold of that Playboy in Home Alone. She's basically Seagal's co-star to take back the ship from Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So she is the actual model.
Yes.
From that Playboy, but she's not playing herself in the movie, is she?
I'm pretty sure. No, it isn't her name.
It's not her name.
But she is playing herself in that, like, both her and the character she's playing posed in that edition of Playboy.
So that's a weird sort of rewriting of history to use this prop from the real world.
Yeah.
And she is like a model in a magazine in real life, and they're using that real magazine, but they're assigning that person to her character instead. What do you think about Under Siege? Do you like that movie?
I really love Tommy Lee Jones, and I really love Gary Busey. I think both of those guys just knock it out of the park.
They make the movie, for sure.
Tommy Lee Jones especially. I don't know if he was doing cocaine while acting in the film, but he did a good job pretending as if he was, if he didn't.
Yeah. Tommy Lee Jones can conjure that character well.
I got real Mick Jagger vibes from him. I mean, I'm sure that's kind of like the persona he was drawing on.
You think so? You're sure that was the persona?
I'm not sure, but I think maybe. Oh, there was another. So I just watched another movie recently that was related to, I don't know, just like battles or whatever. You ever seen the movie Crimson Tide?
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's directed by Tony Scott, and it got me to thinking about all of these like different. Well, Tony Scott is Ridley Scott's brother. Ridley Scott, of course, we know, directed Alien, Blade Runner. I don't know. It just gets me to thinking of like those guys have both contributed a lot to cinema in different ways.
I love Tony Scott. I thought he had a great career. I mean, always in the shadow of Ridley Scott, who's a serious filmmaker in his heyday. But Tony Scott, I mean, a lot of great movies. I really liked his style.
What is that? Top Gun and Days of Thunder are like two of his big ones from the 80s.
I don't love those ones, actually. No. I like him more in the 90s.
Yeah, Enemy of the State is one of my favorites, but Crimson Tide in particular. So normally I think of Tony Scott as kind of like doing the same thing as Michael Bay, and I don't say that in a way that's meant to be disparaging, because I really like Michael Bay in the 90s. I like The Rock. I like Armageddon.
Totally.
I have a great time with those, and I think Tony Scott does the same thing. He does a great job like creating this suspense, but it's kind of
it's
there's
not
much
fun.
Yeah, there's not much depth to it, but it's a lot of fun. Crimson Tide
things are guaranteed to blow up.
Yes,
that's for sure.
Crimson Tide made me think otherwise, though. I feel like Crimson Tide is where like he really showed what he was capable of. Like watch that movie, and anytime the submarine dives, you're seeing like the camera move with it. You're feeling the crew like shifting with the submarine moving, and then
I'm wondering now. Maybe I'm thinking about Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, so I get
that one. When you said Crimson Tide, I was actually thinking that Catherine Bigelow directed that, but she did K-19 Widowmaker.
She did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought she did Hurt Locker.
She did that too.
Oh.
Yeah, she's a filmmaker.
All right. Buzz's life savings.
How much do you think is in Buzz's life savings? Kevin goes, ooh, Buzz's life savings. And it looks like it's $25.
I think it might be, yeah. Maybe like 50 at best. He gives the cashier a 20 at the store.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
He goes
I'm thinking
grocery
like,
shopping, and he doesn't buy anything else because he steals the toothbrush.
yeah,
But, life savings.
yeah.
And that Playboy is $4.
Is it?
Yeah. I don't know if he paid retail price for it.
I
but-
assume Buzz got the play. Oh, speaking of Under Siege, you know what's another good Seagal film? You ever seen Executive Decision?
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah.
I love it. You don't think of it as a Seagal film since he's not the star.
Yeah.
But man, that movie is so good.
Yeah.
So underrated.
Yeah, and I will say this spoils the movie just a little bit, but Seagal dies in the first like 20 minutes of the movie, and I feel like it's the best Seagal has ever been. They like took his name and like, this is a Seagal and Kurt Russell film, and then they kill him off in the first 25 minutes. Like, just brilliant. And he like sacrifices himself and everything. Oh man, I just love the whole thing.
So there's a fun story behind that, because Seagal was contractually obligated to make that movie by Warner Brothers.
He didn't want to.
No, he didn't want to, because I mean, he was like, whether or not he perceived himself at the peak of his game. Then he was a leading man.
Yeah,
he's like Steven Seagal movies. He was not trying to play a character who was going to die in the first 20 minutes. So he was contractually obligated because the previous movie he had made was On Deadly Ground, which I think was his directorial debut.
Oh,
so that's
wow.
a Steven Seagal movie directed by Steven Seagal.
Oh boy.
Starring him. So I think Warner Brothers was a little tentative. So he had a deal on it, which was for any amount that the film went over budget, that came out of his salary from the film. And it went so over budget that the budget exceeded his salary. So he didn't get paid for On Deadly Ground, which is a rotten movie. It's so preachy and stupid. And so he basically, he owed the studio money. And so Warner Brothers said, all right, you'll make us whole if you do Executive Decision. So he really didn't want to.
Oh my God. Yeah, it makes sense that Seagal probably wouldn't have chosen to be in a movie where he died in the first hour.
Yeah.
Stuart Baird directed that movie. Do you know him?
Yeah, I know Stuart Baird. I didn't know he directed that movie.
No, he directed that. He directed U.S. Marshals. The other film he did was Star Trek Nemesis.
Yes.
Which I guess...
Famously maligned.
Yeah, I guess he knew almost nothing about Star Trek. And on set, he was pretty much at odds with most of the cast because he had no working knowledge of the universe in which he was directing the 10th film in a series that took place.
Yeah,
two shows.
And the 5th film of TNG.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah.
And of a really precious IP in its own right.
Yes. So you show up on set not knowing hardly anything about the whole universe, and
Stuart Baird's like, well, you got some Wookiees around here or something?
And Jonathan Frakes felt slighted, at least from what I've read, because he directed the last two films.
Right.
LeVar Burton was another one who wanted to direct that
LeVar
movie.
Burton was kind of in line. No one had promised it to him, but it was kind of his turn. But you were saying something about contractual obligation.
Yes. The only reason he came to direct that movie was because whatever he had done before gave him a slot to like at Paramount. Was like, if this movie comes open, you get to direct it. And he basically got slotted, even though he had no working knowledge of the entire universe, hadn't seen the show.
Speaking of Seagal, have you ever seen The Glimmer Man?
No.
Oh man, you were talking about Tony Scott, and then that made me think of Damon Wayans in The Last Boy Scout.
Yeah.
And Glimmer Man is Keenan Ivory Wayans.
Oh, okay.
It's a serial killer movie, and Seagal is a Buddhist. It's really like the worst kind of that era of Seagal, where he's almost chanting Om. He always has prayer beads on, and he's wearing his, Eastern Asian garb, but he's a cop.
I don't know much about Seagal's career in general. It's largely just the two Under Siege movies and Executive Decision. And it sounds like Executive Decision he didn't even want to be a part of, so it's not really a Seagal film.
I'll tell you one that's late that I actually think is kind of a sleeper, and it's Exit Wounds. You ever heard of it?
Is that DMX?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
That one's got twists and turns, man. That's like, it's also, I like that one because it takes place in Detroit, but they clearly shot it in Canada. I mean, nothing about this movie. I mean, there's so many street scenes and city scenes, and it's like, this doesn't remotely resemble Detroit, but they did manage to put a Michigan license plate on every car in that movie. DMX, you think he's the villain, but then it turns out that he's like kind of undercover, and you learn that like deep into Act 2.
Oh boy.
And then you find out that Seagal's best friend, who is that guy?
Which is the lead in this movie, Seagal or DMX?
Seagal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean they're co-stars, but the protagonist is Seagal.
What's that movie? Double Team.
Dennis
Dennis Rodman.
That's Jean-Claude. That's Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Jean-Claude Van Damme's in that movie?
That's a JCVD movie.
I thought that
Double
was
Team.
Man, how could I confuse Jean-Claude Van Damme with Stephen Baldwin? That's embarrassing. I also love when Kevin opens up the chest and he picks up the picture of Buzz's girlfriend. Woof.
Yeah.
This is another one similar to like when Joe Pesci throws the crowbar after having been, hit in the chest. I think Kevin places the frame down and there's another shattered glass.
Right. You're right. That's, man, what great Foley. Sound design had fun.
Yeah.
They did that twice. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And a fun fact is that Chris Columbus felt like Kevin saying, Buzz, your girlfriend, woof, and then like throwing it away would have been too mean to actually say about a picture of a real girl. So they basically just put a boy in a wig and then just had that be Buzz's girlfriend.
It was the art director's son.
Was it? Yeah. I didn't know that. That's great. What were we saying about Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Well, you've seen Bloodsport, haven't you?
Yeah.
Man, that movie is good.
Took place in Kowloon Walled City, rest in peace.
I mean, they shot a little bit of it there.
Well, the story takes place in Kowloon Walled City.
You're right. The Kumite is behind those doors in Kowloon Walled City.
Yeah, they did They did actually shoot a few shots.
They did. Yeah, no, the stuff that's in the alleyways is there.
Well,
which is probably one of the few. I mean, it's kind of a cool artifact, a historical artifact to just see the inside walls of Kowloon Walled City.
I think Bloodsport was filmed before the city had been evacuated too. There's a Jackie Chan film that came out a couple years later, and they also shot in Kowloon Walled City. But
it had been evacuated.
It had been evacuated, and it was getting
down.
It was getting ready for demolition, and so they were able to just use it without having to worry about interfering with residents that live there.
The thing I love about so many Jean-Claude Van Damme films is they just don't attempt to explain his accent.
No.
I just love it.
Is he playing? So I haven't seen
He's always
many.
like playing cops or playing
like New York cops or whatever. Like he's supposed to be an American.
Yeah. I mean, in Sudden Death, he's playing a security guard at the Pittsburgh Penguins arena, and he's got 2 American children, and there's just no one's ever like, why are you Belgian?
What movie is this? Why is this taking place in Pittsburgh?
Oh, well, I think it was 90.
Nothing against Pittsburgh, by the way. I have a lot of respect for Pittsburgh.
It's just you don't see a lot of movies shot in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So it was the NHL strike. And so the enterprising owner of the arena in Pittsburgh was like, well, if we're not playing hockey, why don't you shoot a movie in here?
Oh, wow.
So they shot a movie where
good idea.
Yeah, and it's a fun movie. It's not Van Damme's best, but it's unique. You don't see a lot of action movies that take place in a hockey arena. No. So it's kind of fun.
Lethal Weapon 3. The whole movie doesn't take place there, but a scene takes place there.
Yeah, well, this whole movie takes place there.
I love that. Going back to Joe Pesci and why he's so funny. I love that scene in Lethal Weapon 3, which isn't one of my favorites in the Lethal Weapon series, by the way. But I
did see that one in the theater.
You did see? Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, that one I definitely saw on VHS, but I love that in the hockey arena, Joe Pesci gets shot, and then the next scene, they're in a hospital, and Joe Pesci's like, hey, Riggs, Murtaugh, we're all the same. We all got shot.
I love that, too.
Yes.
Have you ever seen Death Warrant?
No.
Oh, that's another good one where they're like, he's... they halfway try to explain it, where he's just beating guys up on the street in LA, and then he's called in. He's a cop, and he's called in, and the chief is like, "This isn't Canada, Burke. This is LA." And it's like, wait, oh, he's Canadian? Oh, he's French Canadian. Okay, that's how we're gonna spin
Wait,
it.
is like French Canada the Wild West of Canada or something? And
Who
he's like,
knows?
he's come to.
I think it's a line that's dropped to explain away his accent.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's like Belgian, French Canadian. No one's gonna know the difference.
Yeah.
But he's a Mountie.
Yeah.
He's like Canadian Mounted Police. And the FBI has brought him in to embed him deep undercover in a prison to try to look for a serial killer, because no one's going to know him because he's Canadian.
He's going into a prison to look for a serial killer? Is he like killing prisoners? Or,
Yeah, he's killing,
or is
right.
he escaping every night and killing
he's killing
citizens?
He's killing prisoners. So prisoners are dying and they think it's a serial killer.
Ah, okay.
So, but actually it's a whole thing. You know, it's like the warden is in on it, and the warden is Art LaFleur. Do you know him?
I know the name. I just can't place a face to it.
You'll know him from First Kid. But that one is the prison is like a penal colony, and like the deeper levels that they go, that's where the guards don't go.
Yeah.
And they're just like cooking drugs and making weapons and stuff down there. Like, the rules make no sense. It's awesome.
I'm tragically undereducated when it comes to Jean-Claude Van Damme, which is particularly sad because the first rated R film which I ever saw in theaters partially was Time Cop. My dad used to run a second run theater. It was single screen, and Time Cop was running through there, and for whatever reason he was just enamored with the scene at the end where Ron Silver as the villain dies and he has like morphed into or whatever.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And so my dad took us up to the theater while it was closed. He took us up to the projection booth, threw on the last reel of Time Cop, and we got to watch Ron Silver get morphed into himself from the projection booth.
In an empty theater.
In an empty theater. First rated R experience I've ever had. And my dad told us to keep it a secret from my mom.
Yeah. Well, you've just violated his trust.
Statute of limitation.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Pops. If you're trying to fill in some blanks, I mean, hot takes here, maybe not. I think a lot of people agree with me, but I think Jean-Claude Van Damme is way better. I think his sense of humor is way better. I think his martial arts are way more impressive. And I think overall, he has more movies that are tolerable. Though I will give, some people hate Steven Seagal just completely.
I feel
I can't quite get there because there are a number of Seagal films that I actually enjoy.
I feel like I really love Under Siege, but I love it in spite of Steven Seagal. I feel like he's one of the low points in the movie. And I have yet to see a movie where Seagal is like, you know, I do like him in Executive Decision. I think he does a pretty good job there.
Yeah. His career could have gone a different way if he'd had a little more humility and been comfortable foraying into supporting roles. Then he might not be making these like Chinese produced straight to VOD $100,000 movies that nobody watches. I mean, he might still be playing smaller characters.
Hanging out with Vladimir Putin.
Exactly.
No clothes on anybody. Sickening.
All right. So in the break, the producer kind of chastised us a little bit. I feel like we've been doing a pretty good job, but I guess kind of some notes on staying on topic.
Yeah. So we've got Macaulay Culkin, Kevin McAllister, is in Buzz's bedroom, going through his chest. He finds the fireworks. And then
the firecrackers.
And the Playboy. And then so speaking of rated R films, do you ever see The Good Son?
Oh, yeah.
Macaulay Culkin's first rated R film.
Yeah, no, and speaking of Macaulay Culkin, too.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, Home Alone.
Oh, Good Son, and Elijah Wood, too.
Yeah.
And Elijah Wood is such a little wimp in that movie. He's like, oh, he's the good boy. And
yeah.
It's not a good movie.
No.
But it's pretty fun, though.
As a kid, I think I saw that when I was like 9 or 10 years old, and I just remember feeling like I'd been treated to something dark that a kid wasn't supposed to see me, but it was really exciting.
So I remember when that movie came out, and I was a Macaulay Culkin fan because, I mean, hello, Home Alone.
I'd seen Home Alone, Uncle Buck.
So I distinctly remember learning about it because I was at the hair salon getting my hair cut. I was waiting in line, and my barber or hair cutter person was talking about it. And she was like, I just don't think it's right that Macaulay Culkin is in a rated R movie. And my ears perked up. I was like, what? I got to see this.
His first F-bomb is great because he's having a conversation with Elijah Wood. And then Elijah Wood's basically like, well, my mom's dead, so now your mom's my mom now. And then Elijah Wood leaves the treehouse. And as he's on his way down, Macaulay Culkin looks down and he says, don't with me, good son.
Did you ever see My Girl?
I've never seen that. I do know the ending, though.
You accused me one time of not liking the Heartsy stuff, and I'm gonna fess up. In this case, I don't. I saw that movie when it came out. I was young, and what an eye roll! I was disgusted.
Yeah.
I was sickened by that movie. How melodramatic it was.
As much as like during Forrest Gump.
I didn't see Forrest Gump when it came out.
Oh, okay.
I saw Forrest Gump 2.
There's a sequel to My Girl, which seems strange.
No, that's what I was thinking of. I saw My Girl 2.
Oh, yeah.
I saw My Girl 1, 2.
Which one did you see first?
My Girl 1.
Did you see Home Alone 2 first or Home Alone 1 first?
No. I saw Home Alone before Home Alone 2 came out, man.
That's right.
I'm old school.
No, I remember that. We
both did. Come on. We would have no right to make this show if we were some late bloomer Home Alone chumps.
What are some other Macaulay Culkin films?
He did Getting Even with Dad. That is a great formulaic family comedy. It plays by the book.
Yeah.
But it works. You can sit down and watch that movie and never go, oh, this is really dragging.
Yeah.
Like it just clips along.
There's no eye rolls like there is in My Girl when Macaulay Culkin dies from bees.
Oh, God. That girl, when he dies, the thing that really got me about that one was, so he wears glasses in that movie. He's like a big nerd.
Yeah.
And he's
that's what determines if you have glasses.
If you wear glasses, you're a nerd. And he's allergic to stuff. He's always like doing his inhaler and stuff.
Yeah.
And then he dies because he gets stung by all the bees and his glasses fall off. And she's crying and sobbing and she's going, he needs his glasses. He can't see without his glasses. And I just wanted to tear the tape out of the video cassette. I hate it. Who wrote that? Get a real job.
Were you watching it in the room with somebody who was crying during that scene?
I don't know. Probably.
I bet you ruined the experience for them.
The movie ruined the experience for me.
So Buzz's room is just another step along Kevin's journey throughout Home Alone. And there are all of these different places in his house that he hasn't, been able to explore, different parts of his life that he hasn't been able to explore. And I feel like Buzz's room in particular is one of the I can't go in there zones, especially because Buzz says it. So
prohibitively off limits.
Yeah. And so
it almost makes you think that maybe he's almost never been in there before. And we kind of get insight into Buzz more than just the bully of the little brother that we see through Kevin's lens.
He has a girlfriend.
He has a girlfriend.
And a Playboy.
And he also is clearly into sports. And he's got an Iced Tea poster on his wall, which is cool. So we get some, insight into like what he likes.
We've brought this up a few times before, and I feel like it's worth calling back. But Buzz, we also learn, is the kind of kid who keeps a Playboy on the top of his chest. And I think that says something about Buzz.
What you're saying is like Buzz is unabashedly Buzz. He's not afraid to be Buzz. So maybe in some way Buzz has sort of figured himself out.
Yes.
This has felt really productive to me.
And you know what? I'm starting to think Buzz is a real role model for Kevin McAllister. I think that's what I've learned today.
He couldn't have done it without him.
Yeah.
The Long Road Home Alone is broadcast live from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. It's hosted by Jimmy Dantes and Joey Z, and produced by Pat Muldoon. Until next time, eat junk and listen to rubbish.